Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Fake Plastic Treefingers. In this episode, we're going to be discussing Radiohead's third album, OK Computer. Sound okay?
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty okay.
Pretty okay.
Pretty.
Rock on. Yeah, so let's just hit the facts. Let's do the facts of Radiohead's third album here. So, released 21 May 1997, recorded really over a long period of time, starting all the way back in 1995 with track number 11, Lucky. And then they kind of got the chunk of it from July of 96 through March of 97. And they did a lot of the recording in a house in England called St. Catherine's Court.
Yeah, interesting fact about that actually. Apparently they were haunted while they recorded it, and a lot of that actually came into the album. Which is really interesting because you can kind of hear it. You know.
I think it definitely I think this album sounds very haunted, quite
Yeah.
honestly. So it doesn't surprise me. And it just, yeah, like kind of like we talked a lot with the Bends, how it has its own vibe, right? It has its own and that's part of what makes it such a great record. It has its own feel to it. I would say OK Computer, very much so.
Oh
Very
yeah.
much so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It definitely has a very eerie feel to it.
Mm-hmm. And it, in that sense, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of their catalog, really. I mean,
Yeah.
ever since they've had that kind of eerie, unsettling thing going on with their music, for sure. Yeah, so the producer on this record was good old Nigel Godrich.
Old Nigel, and it looks like Radiohead also co-produced it as well.
Yeah, at this point they were kind of like, we got this, we don't need the label. So, and I remember that like learning about how this album was made, and it was recorded in this house, right, and in the countryside in England. And a lot of times in a band's progression, career progression, they will hit that point where they're kind of like they can start to dictate terms a little bit more. It's less like the label wants us to do it this way, and more like, well, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to give you what we want to give you, and if you don't like it, then deal with it. Right now, I mean, I'm sure that doesn't tell the whole story, but they were starting because they had quite a bit of success with the Bends actually in the UK, not in the US so much, but in the UK. They really were able to have a little bit more control over the creation of this record. So
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, and it of course begins really their, the collaboration that's been going on ever since between Nigel and Radiohead, right? I mean, he's essentially, I mean, I don't know if you call him the sixth or the seventh member of Radiohead, right? Because you've got the core five,
and then we got Nigel, and then I guess would Stanley Donald count?
That's what I was kind of thinking. Is Stanley number 6 or is he number 7? I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Of course, then they've got this drummer, a second drummer who they've kind of added, and I don't know if they consider him a part of the band or not at this point, but we'll talk more about that when we get to some of the later records. Yeah, so those are the facts on this record, and then let's talk some about just our own personal background on this one. So you want me to go first again?
Yeah.
All right. Ahead. Well, this record, as you know, Brannick, like this record, like changed my life, right? It's one of those records for me, will forever be a top 10, probably top 5, maybe even like number 1 record for me, right? I kind of vacillate on what my number 1 record of all time is, but this one is probably constantly in the running. And really, like, I can remember the day I got it, right? And it was the day it came out. It was 21 May 1997. I know that date because I remember being at the record store, and I don't think I was at the record store to get this record, but I was there and I saw it, and I was really into the Bends at that time, and all of the B-sides and everything, and I just could not get enough of Radiohead at that point. And I showed up at the record store probably looking to buy something else, and it was like, oh, Radiohead has a new album out, and went and got it. and I just instantly like fell in love with the record. I remember putting it into my car CD player as soon as I left the record store and hearing Airbag for the first time and just being like, what is this? This is amazing. Right? Like just the drums, the way the
Yeah.
drums come in, and they like the guitar kind of like bleeds um between like guitar and cello. Like it's just like it's all just constantly in motion and shape shifting. It was, man, it just tripped me out in the best way. Right?
Yeah.
It was an incredible experience to hear it for the first time. um and so I immediately like started telling all my friends about it. I was like, you've got to hear this record, it's so good. So I personally take credit for the success of this, and then Radiohead becoming the biggest band in the world because I told everybody about it. um but in all seriousness, like I fell in love with this record from the moment I heard it. And it was definitely challenging too. Like it was a little, there were moments when I was like, this doesn't sound like the Bends very much. But at
Hmm.
that point, had been a music fan long enough that I had learned to enjoy some more quote unquote difficult records, right? And to find like the joy and in bands putting out like things that were maybe a little more difficult than what I put out before, or made you think a little bit differently about it. Um, but yeah, and I just want to say I bought it. I remember it was from the East End Ear Ecstasy in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. And Ear Ecstasy was this amazing record store that was around for a long time in Louisville. Went from being like a tiny little hole in the wall record store back in the 80s, and hit that music revolution in the early 90s, and then became like huge. It was like a landmark in Louisville for a long time. And they actually were, had a second location at one point. And that's where I bought this record from, was out in out in Middletown, East End area in Louisville, Kentucky, from Ear Ecstasy. So yeah, so it was just this is a record. This record is a huge deal for me. So,
Hmm.
Brannick, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, I don't really remember my first listen to this album. I think I probably listened to it when I was doing my first like dive into Radiohead. Um, and I mean, I remember really liking it, but to be honest, I don't remember really much besides just, enjoying it a lot. Um, and I mean, there were always like I knew a couple tracks before I, dove fully into the album, but I mean, I just I wasn't like I don't really remember it that much. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
So so that's kind of our personal background. So let's talk about the tracks, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, all right. So track one,
Airbag.
Airbag. So I've already talked a little bit about this track because I could just remember. I can remember the first moment I heard it. It blew my mind. Tell me your thoughts on Airbag, Brannick.
Yeah, well, I mean, Airbag is just an incredible opener. I mean, it's very different from anything they've done so far. And it really does set the tone for the album. You know, it's very chaotic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also like it's very cohesive in the same way.
Yeah.
And I mean, the drums on this album are just, I mean, on the song are great.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, a spectacular opening track, probably, maybe one of the best ones they've done ever.
Yeah. It's it is one of the best opening tracks on any record ever, for sure. Um, it's it's just mind blowing. It never ceases to be awesome to me, and I can't say that about many songs. You listen to certain songs a number of times, and you have to wait a while before you can come back to them. One of my favorite things about this one though is it's like it's just it rocks it, but it rocks pretty hard, but it's just beautiful too. It's like
Hmm.
it has a really beautiful melody. It just sounds like you're in this like futuristic outer space sort of like just mind escape, like
Hmm.
you're it just takes you somewhere else. So many great lines in the song, but my favorite is just in an interstellar burst, I'm back to save the universe, right? It's
Yeah.
just little things like this. And I mean, this to me is like Tom just coming into his own as in the distinctiveness of his own songwriting style. And I just can't, I can't help myself like just gushing over this song. It's so good.
Yeah,
So good.
it's an incredible opening track.
All right. Paranoid Android.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, one of the band's most popular songs, and it's an iconic song,
Mhm.
it's a great multi-part track. One of my favorite parts about this song is I guess the bridge part where they keep on switching from 4/4 to 7/4.
Mm.
I love that so much. And the solo is also a great solo.
Mhm.
So I mean, yeah, amazing track. I mean, uh yeah, I love this song.
Yeah, no doubt. I have very vivid memories, and and I do wonder, like, if I can't remember if I actually saw the music video for this track before I bought the album, because this was the lead single
Hmm.
off of the record, or if I just saw it later on. The video for it. I don't know if you've ever seen the video. It's another one that'll be
No.
interesting to talk about when we get there. It's like animated and it's really strange, as you would expect from Radiohead,
Yeah.
but it's I this song is um it's just an amazingly like constructed song.
Yeah.
You have the opening part. It starts off with this kind of interesting little guitar figure, and then it has the interesting little kind of eerie instrumentation, right, with the on the chorus, and then you hit the bridge, you hit the whatever you call it, right, the middle section where everything just falls out and it just has the rain down, right.
Hmm.
And wow, again, for my um you know I guess I would have been, so 1997, I guess I would have been 17 years old at this point. And in my 17-year-old brain, this was just mind blowing, right.
Hmm.
Like I've indicated before, Brannick, you you, because of current technology, have the ability to go out and listen to just about everything, and so you can just like listen to any music you want. But literally,
Hmm.
I had a record collection, and that was all I had, right,
Hmm.
of stuff to listen
Yeah.
to. And I'd heard a lot of interesting records up to that point because I was in bands, and I had friends who were really into like liked some weirder music and that sort of thing. But you know no one no one had made something like this that I'd heard before, and just
Hmm.
captured my imagination. So just another really cool song. I loved the story. I loved the connection they made to, um, and I don't know that you're aware of this so much, but the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the Paranoid Android. There's this character in that movie or in the book named Marvin the Android. Is it Marvin? I think it's Marvin. And he's just the book is, first of all, just a really really kind of like goofy satirical like science fiction book.
Hmm.
And then there's this character who is basically a paranoid android, right? So you think about like he's basically like a robot who's just depressed all the time. And so I think they sort of took the idea of that and naming this song. Anyway, but
Yeah.
fantastic little song here.
And another interesting thing about the title of the song, I think it really sums up the the album very well, because it's a very paranoid album, and
Hmm.
it focuses on like technology and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, iconic track right here.
Yeah, well, really out of the gate with just track two, we have this theme, right, of like technology, and like the possibilities it gives, but also the drawbacks, right.
Hmm.
um Airbag right off the bat, going back to Airbag and just talking about like you have um you have these automobiles that can take you anywhere, right.
Hmm.
And like people 200 years ago would never have dreamed of like going from one city to another, that for us is just like a day, like a quick day trip, like not even a day
Hmm.
trip, it's just like a couple hours away. It would have been like a several days journey for them, and it would have been perilous, and like all these problems, you have to do all this planning, right. for us, it's like you can get from here to there, no big deal, right? And but what's the drawback to that? Well, you can get into a horrible car accident and die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or be maimed, and that's you have this idea of like the the blessings and the curses of technology. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like that's a huge theme of this record from the very beginning. Same thing with Paranoid, and like this title of Paranoid Android here. And so it's interesting that you at the same time you have all this like interesting technology being employed in the music to to make it sound like totally different, like nothing you've ever heard before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right, Subterranean, Homesick, Alien.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of still the title there from Bob Dylan, but
Yep.
it's a pretty great track. I mean, for a while this was probably my least favorite song on the record.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I went back and listened to the album a couple days ago, I really enjoyed it. It feels very open. But it also kind of feels claustrophobic in a way. It's very strange.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just a great song to just kind of, like space out to.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah. Totally kind of a space out track. It's really about like wanting to escape the world with the help of aliens, right?
mhm.
And when does that not feel sort of like something you'd want to do,
Yeah.
right? With all the problems of the world. And there's all this, like there's a lot of times people will think about, like, as we enter deeper and deeper into technology and like our technology gets more and more advanced, is that like, will the aliens, like we reach a certain point, the aliens are just kind of like, okay, here we are and we're going to welcome you into the interstellar community, right?
Mhm.
um I know you've never really watched Star Trek, but that's kind of a part of the thing with the Star Trek lore, right? Is
Mhm.
like humanity reaches a certain point in its technological development and it's always getting into wars and everything, but then it reaches this point and then like the aliens come and they're like, okay, now it's time for you to join us in this great interstellar community, right?
Mhm.
That you didn't know existed before. So it's kind of interesting to think about, like, um you know that concept in terms of this song and this guy, this subterranean kid supposedly who just thinks he's from outer space, or at least wants to go to outer space and escape. But just a really cool vibe on this song. And speaking of taking this song, lifting the title from Bob Dylan, um I mean, don't you kind of think that's part of the rock and roll, like the grand like rock and roll tradition, right?
Oh yeah,
Is
definitely, definitely.
not like they're not necessarily just to cover something, but like to kind of like borrow ideas and give a nod to to certain things that have come before,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's part of music. You need to you take things that other people did and make it better.
Hmm.
That's just all about that's what music is all about.
Yeah. Well,
Um.
and I even think about with Paranoid Android, I wrote down a reference, and these are notes from a while back, but to Bohemian Rhapsody. And I think that was just this idea of having a song that's like got multiple parts that don't really seem to go together at first in isolation, but then you kind of put them together and it works really well. But it
Mhm.
makes a little bit of a longer song, but it works really well. There's a lot of people, I think, that compared certain songs on this record to the Beatles' White Album, right?
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think Paranoid Android got compared to Happiness is a Warm Gun off that record. And then Karma Police sounds just like the riff sounds a lot like Sexy Sadie
Mhm.
off of the White Album. So anyway, yeah, it's interesting because it is kind of a you know a a record that kind of takes rock and roll to a new place, but it pays a lot of attention and pays a lot of tribute to what's come before as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
um exit music for a film, track 4.
Yeah, I mean, so far, this one I feel like is like kind of the first song on the record to build.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off with just Tom and the acoustic guitar, and then it just builds into this beautiful and super unsettling song.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sounds so amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. I mean, I don't know, it's that the I guess the filtered choir thing, I guess.
Yeah.
That it just sounds it also kind of goes back to the theme of technology, because it's a beautiful choir, but it's obviously not real. It's it's not real, but it sounds so beautiful.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful song. It's a very dark song, right? I would say the first three tracks are not particularly dark, and then this fourth track comes off as pretty dark. By the way, darkly beautiful but very dark, right? By the way, do you know which film it's in reference to?
Yeah, it was the exit music for Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, that's right. So it was a version of Romeo and Juliet that came out in I believe, I'm looking it up right now, I believe it was 1996, but it may have been 97. Let me see here. I'm looking it up on Wikipedia as we talk. Let's do this. Baz Luhrmann's film. Yeah, so 1996 romantic crime tragedy, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, a young Leonardo DiCaprio, and a young Claire Danes. And this movie was a pretty big deal when it came out. I remember I went to see it in the theaters, and it came out really 6 months before OK Computer. But do you know what? I remember hearing exit music for a film on the closing credits for this. And I'm not sure. I want to say it was actually like an early version of it or something. But I do remember hearing that. And then when I heard this record, I was like, that's the exit music from Romeo and Juliet. So it was kind of a cool little connection, and also to realize that I'd like heard part of this album before that came out. But of course, there's another great Radiohead song in that movie as well that features prominently in that movie as well. Do you know which one?
Yeah, Talk Show Host.
Yeah, can't wait to talk about that one. That's a great track. But of course it's more of a rarity B-side. A really interesting one because it's got multiple versions of it, so it'd be interesting to talk about like which one's the best version of that song. But anyway, hey, by the way, hit us up with a like, right? Hit that like button right now. Hit us with a comment below. Hit that subscribe button, please. Help us out, help this channel out. Hit that subscribe button, we really appreciate it. All right, so but yeah, exit music, for me it is a really dark track. It's very beautiful, but I would even say it can be a little difficult for me to listen to sometimes, maybe give too much attention to, because it is, the lyrics are very bleak, right? And do you know like how Romeo and Juliet ends?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Have you? I'm just not sure if you've read it in school before or something like that. No, I haven't,
but I okay know.
Yeah, so the play itself ends on a very tragic note, very, very tragic note. And and it's it really captures, I think, the essence of that play in a in a very, I don't know, this is going to sound lame, but in a very Radiohead way, right? Just like very bitter and angry towards all the forces of like evil in the world and the things that did this to us, right? That brought us to this point, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but a very very great song. I remember one of my buddies, Alex, he heard this song and he just like thought it was the most amazing song he'd ever heard at the time. So
yeah,
beautiful
track.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
All right, well, picking up with the totally just uplifting next track, right? So
yeah,
track 5,
Let Down.
Yes.
Yeah,
it definitely sounds a little brighter, maybe on the surface.
Oh
right?
yeah, this is probably Radiohead's like catchiest song, I'd say.
It has a very poppy feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it gets compared a lot, I feel like, to Sloop John B.
Okay, you said, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Who does it remind you of? And I don't know if you saw my notes, but yeah, does it?
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I can hear it. I don't think it's like super apparent. There are other songs by other bands that are much more sound like Sloop John B, but there's definitely a resemblance in the sound. But this song is like super catchy, but it's also very I mean, it's a letdown, you know, it's, you know, sad. But it's, you know, such a fun song at the same time.
Yeah, you're underselling the letdown thing. It's like, you know, bug getting crushed in the ground. You're like a bug getting crushed in the ground.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, but it's this at the same time, it's like it's this interesting are you getting that little bit of buzz in your
Yeah.
headphones? Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but anyway, it's like transient. Um yeah, so it's the fridge buzz. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's the spirit of Radiohead channeling the fridge buzz for us. Um so this song is like, I think, and all of the tracks on this album have this to a certain degree, right? These like juxtapositions of these different ideas and emotions, and just like contradictions colliding, right? So you have
Mhm.
this song which has a very like kind of almost like poppy feel. It does remind you a little bit of the Beach Boys, and then, you know, and it's like it's about like wanting to be able to just like fly away from all of your problems, but reality just crushes you like a bug in the ground, right?
Mhm.
um but yeah, like this was an early favorite of mine for sure. It was the probably the track that I latched onto most, and I think it's an interesting time signature, right? It's like five. Is it in 5/4?
Uh,
I
I
know
think it
it's in
might
some
be.
kind
I
of
think it
interesting
might
time
be
signature.
in 6/4, maybe.
Okay,
Uh,
let me see here. Let me see if I can find some good notes on this. See, you're supposed to be the music theory guy, you
yeah,
know,
I
like
just kind of. I'm pretty sure it's 6/4. It's either 6/4 or 6/8, but I think it's 6/4.
let's see here. Let down. Does it say anything on the Wikipedia page about the time signature? Um, yeah, nothing in here that I see about that. But yeah, it's a very beautiful song,
Hmm.
as so many of these tracks have been so far. But when you listen a little closer, very sad, very sad.
Yeah, very very sad track.
All right, track 6,
Karma Police.
Karma Police. Karma Police.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really have anything to say about the song other than, I mean, it's uh amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I feel like you can't really describe in words how much of an iconic song this is. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um.
Do you feel so? I mentioned earlier that it gets compared. I've heard it be compared the riff to Sexy Sadie. Do you think
Mhm.
it's how close do you think it is to that?
I think it's a pretty close. You know, a pretty close. You know, take. I mean, I don't know Sexy Sadie all that well, but the times I've listened to it, I feel like, oh, this sounds a lot like Karma Police,
Yeah.
or Karma Police sounds a lot like this.
So I I've always felt like, I mean, I can see the resemblance, but I've always felt like it's a little bit because I had the first person who told me about this um was like he was a huge Beatles fan, and he played that he played Sexy Sadie. He's like, this song is totally a ripoff of Sexy Sadie. And he played that for me. And even still to this day, when I hear Sexy Sadie, I'm like, okay, it kind of, I guess structurally it's reminiscent and maybe like the tone of it a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it's, you know, there's certain songs by certain bands that you're just like, oh, that is a total ripoff, like direct ripoff of this, right?
Mhm.
To me, it doesn't have the same feel to it, right? Um, and so anyway, I think it's more original than maybe a lot of people are willing to allow for. But regardless, the resemblance is really just that opening riff, and
Mhm.
like that introductory riff. And like you said, I mean, it's an incredible song. So many great lyrics. I just love, you know, the for a minute there, I lost myself.
Oh
I mean, I
yeah.
love the second half, like the
Yeah.
second half of the song. Is just a huge favorite of mine. When they're just rocking out and singing that line over and over. I love that he like sings for a minute there, I lost
Yeah.
myself. Just it's the little things that make that make this record amazing, and it's, you know, true with Radiohead.
Yeah.
Um,
I also love how the song ends. Like it's
yes.
like it gets overwhelmed by like this like beeping noise, like, or
Hmm.
like this humming. and it just sounds so. It's just very unsettling, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a great song. And another interesting thing is I'm pretty sure it actually started off as kind of like a joke between the band.
Hmm.
Like they would joke around, like if someone's being a jerk or something, they'd be like, "Hey, the karma police are gonna come get you" or something, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, great track right here.
You think that something like the karma police actually exists?
Maybe.
I mean, just like in theory, like it's you do something and you think you get away from it, but or, get away with it, but eventually it's going to come get you, right?
Yeah.
They're going to come get you. The karma police are going to come get you.
Yeah.
But with anything written by Tom York, you wonder if that's really how he feels, though. If he
Yeah.
doesn't think like, actually, I think he'll probably get away with it. He's probably hoping that the karma police will come get some people at some point, but
Yeah.
but probably thinks it won't happen. All right. Well, then we have the completely normal track 7.
Oh yeah, Fair Happier.
Yeah. I mean,
Super catchy track.
just straightforward pop song.
Yeah. I mean,
So
catchy song they've ever wrote, you know.
yeah. Continuing with the Beatles influence here.
Revolution 9.
Yeah. The White, in particular the White Album, that it kind of mirrors certain aspects of that, right? This sound collage, ambient, like just putting all these different samples in there, just being a little bit disturbing. I mean, you see that? You see that connection?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is a very disturbing little, I don't even know if you can call this a song, but it's very disturbing. I remember the first time I listened to it, I was totally freaked out. I was like, what is this? You know? But I mean, it's super weird, but also it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely had the same reaction. Of course, I was already so enamored of the first 6 songs on the album that I was a little bit like, okay, I can handle this, but I was kind of like, but why? I didn't really like. You don't really, it's hard to understand when you're like why they'd include something like this on the record, and you listen to some of like the other tracks that got left off the record and you're like, well, why wouldn't you put this one on there? I mean, why do you think bands do that? Why do you think Radiohead did that in this case? I mean, it's obviously not a song that's going to be a hit in any way. And but it's not even like a normal song. Why would they put this on there, do you think?
I mean, I would say it's just because they're Radiohead and they want to do whatever they want. But I mean, I think it does tie in with the themes of like technology, because it's like the Stephen Hawking sort of voice, you know. And the fact that it's unsettling definitely ties into the theme of technology, because it's this like robot talking, and it just feels really not right, you know. It feels so artificial, you know. So I mean, that's what I think, I think that's why they threw it on there. But I mean,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think, I think it just thematically fits overall with it. And, there is throughout this record, this real effort to like create a certain ambience, right? Like to create a certain background noise and all of it, that I think is supposed to be a commentary on on the modern world, all this technology, all these things going on. And I mean, like that's only accelerated in my lifetime, right? That like, like we didn't have these bad boys back when I was, when I first heard this record, but it's kind of like now the noise is just everywhere, and it's almost like feels like it's impossible to escape from. So yeah, I mean, it's, and kind of continuing on that like paranoid android sort of vibe.
This like voice that they're using, you can also hear in Paranoid Android during the first chorus. Yeah. So I mean, Fitter Happier, weird track.
Yeah, but I feel like it plays an important role on the album.
Right? It wouldn't be OK Computer without it.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, reminder, hit that like button if you haven't already. Comment below, let us know. Hey, tell us what you think about the tracks, right? Any interesting thoughts that you guys have on these tracks so far? Hit that subscribe button to help us out, and get notified whenever we release new content over here. All right, track 8.
Electioneering.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of like the last track that they have where it sounds like it could have been off of Pablo Honey.
Interesting.
You know, we kind of talked about it with Bones on the Bends. And it's a fine track. You know, I don't hate it, but I feel like it in most cases I feel like it would feel kind of out of place on the album. You know, I'm not sure. It doesn't feel too out of place. I think it kind of works. But I mean, it's, you know, it's a pretty heavy song. And I mean, some days I love it, some days I don't, but I mean, it's a fine song, you know.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, this one has been like my least favorite track on the album. It's exactly what you said, right? It's like, it's something that right on this recording, it doesn't sound like it belongs on Pablo Honey, but the song itself, you're like, okay, that could have been something on Pablo Honey with maybe a little bit different lyrics, right?
Yeah.
I do think it's like the lyrics are clever. I love the chorus being or like the lead into the chorus being, I trust I can rely on her. But I just think Tom York has some really interesting phrasing. I love how he just takes like, he'll take like everyday sorts of speech and turn them into lyrics for his songs. That's something he started to do a great deal on this record. And you know, it's an interesting commentary too, you know, just on like, you know, the whole idea of like electioneering, right? Like, you know, engineering an election to go a certain way, right? And how, you know, that just goes against what, you know, like what would seem to be justice and the, you know, true justice in the political realm, right? But yeah, it never really did much for me as a song. It was always the song, if I was in a hurry, it was the one I was likely to skip over most prominently. So yeah. So track 9.
Climbing Up the Walls.
Yeah.
So I see there you have written that it's like a Portishead sort of influence, and I don't really understand why. I don't see it.
Well, have you listened to a lot of Portishead?
Not really.
Okay. Well, then you need to listen to more Portishead.
I guess so.
No, I think that was something they talked about. That Portishead was kind of, in fact, they've worked with Portishead's. I think that's their second drummer is Portishead's.
Oh, really?
Drummer. But Portishead was kind of, they were one of the cool like they were one of the like super like edgy avant-garde rock bands of the time. And they were one of the big like purveyors of this trip hop sound. And the first Radiohead, do you know what the first Radiohead song that went that trip hop sort of route was?
I'm thinking it's probably going to be off of like Kid A or something.
No, it's actually Talk Show Host, right?
Oh, really?
Talk Show Host is their first song that really has that kind of feel to it, and that went for that sort of vibe. But yeah, so this song to me, and I mean, you may quibble with it, but I think that's what it's sort of based in, right? It's like that's the effect they were going for, because this song, I mean, this album has been a departure for Radiohead so far, but this song, I think more than any other, is like, whoa, like this is just what is, like, this is crazy sounding.
This is so weird. Yeah, and I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more, just because I didn't really say much about it, besides I didn't understand why it's
go ahead.
But I mean, I love this song so much, you know. And it's so claustrophobic, you know. It just feels so close to you, like it's following you around everywhere. But it's just so
Stop following me around.
I know, like,
climbing up the walls.
I know, it's following me around, you know. But it's just so amazing, you know. I love how I love the fuzzy vocals of Tom. I think that just fits the track even better. And it's so amazing. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's really one of the like one of the great. I think it's a big leap forward for Radiohead, and this track in particular. I love going back and listening to all the stuff that's come out now from the demos and everything they recorded. I love the have you heard the how much of the tape on my special edition of the Okay Not Okay have you heard?
I mean, I've only listened to the one on streaming services. So
Okay,
I mean,
so there's this jumbled words of climbing up the walls read by little Dan Clements, and it's like a little kid reading the words of this song.
okay.
Like it's and then you'll have like just different versions of the song also, and it's like it's so interesting to like listen to all these things as Tom was maybe like piecing little things together and then bringing it all together in the studio effort here. The One of the big things about this one is the way they use strings, and they made a big point that they wanted to use strings. Like they use strings quite a bit on the bends, but they made but it was more in like that traditional kind of like Beatles-ish way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like very pretty, melodic sorts of ways. And with climbing up the walls, they wanted to do something that was like very, you know, like left field, doing like, really using like 20th century, like classical music, kind of avant-garde styles, instead. And so, you get some of that in this, you start to get some of that in this record. And of course, Johnny would go on and do much more with that, right? He would do music, movie soundtracks and that kind of thing, using those methods. And that's, I think for this one, it really opened the door to what they would explore on their next couple of albums, right? With Kid A and Amnesiac, just different, like even more unsettling soundscapes, like different uses of instruments, just creating like a certain like world of sound within the song, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
certain atmosphere of sound. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting having electioneering and climbing up the walls next to each other.
Yeah.
Since, electioneering is the most they've gone back to the sound of Pablo Honey or the bends on the album so far. And then climbing up the walls is where they depart from that. That's the biggest departure they've had so far from that sound. So yeah, I mean, this is an amazing track.
Yeah.
It's
No doubt ski. All right. No surprises. What do you
well,
think?
I think this might have been the first song I ever heard by Radiohead.
No kidding.
It was, yeah, I think it was definitely the first song I heard off of this album. And I remember, I never really liked it because I thought it was super sad. And then after a while it grew on me a lot, and it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
The opening with the music box is so pretty. And I think the lyrics in the song are also so powerful, especially the line such a pretty house and such a pretty garden. I've always loved that line so much.
What instrument is that? Is that a music box at the beginning, or is it? Because I thought it was like just a high guitar arpeggio, and then I think they play a is it a glockenspiel? I think it's a glockenspiel.
Okay, that'll make sense.
Because I've seen Johnny play, like when they play it live, Johnny plays like some kind of little xylophone type of implement. Let me look it up here and see if it explains. Johnny, yeah, glockenspiel. Yeah, it's a glockenspiel.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, you're right. It's like it's so like pretty. It's another one like Let Down, where it's like it's so pretty and everything. You're just like, oh, what a nice song. And then you think about the lyrics and you're like, these lyrics are like depressing, extremely depressing. But I do love, like, it's great. It's a pretty like anthemic little song. I've, it's one of those where people sing along to it, right? When it's like bring down the government, right?
Yeah.
People love to sing along to that line. They don't speak for us, right? So yeah, really great track. Have you seen the video for this one?
Yeah, I think that was the first Radiohead video I'd ever seen.
Okay.
And yeah, iconic video with Tom going underwater.
Yeah, don't try this at home.
Yeah.
yeah, it's and one of these days we're gonna have to watch what is it?
Meeting
Meeting
people
People
is
is
easy.
easy. So
Yeah.
you can see like all the video footage of him making that video.
I think I've seen it before. Yeah. He
Okay.
like they sped it up super fast.
Yeah. They had
Yeah.
to, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a very cool song. Real palate cleanser. It's kind of a palate cleanser after
Yeah.
climbing up the walls, which is just like overwhelming with all of its paranoia and crazy atmosphere.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I've been put into the mental institute with all the white walls, and I'm just going to sit here and they're going to play me lullabies, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's like it the way this album is sequenced is so brilliant. You
Yeah.
know, it just goes through all these different emotions, but somehow it has the same it's so unified at the same time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
track 11,
Lucky.
lucky,
Yeah.
lucky number 11.
This song doesn't really feel very lucky because
Yeah.
he's like, pull me out of the plane crash.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pull me out of the air crash. Yeah, the this was the one, by the way, that was recorded in 1995. I think it was recorded just a little bit after the Bends came out. And so it had been around for a little while. It was released on, I think, was it the War Child? Let's see here. It was originally released on the Help album, a charity compilation organized by War Child. I love the intro to this.
Oh yeah.
I love, and it's like Ed, like up above the the on the above the neck on the guitar, right? Towards the like tuning pegs, playing that part, right?
Yeah.
And just like creating this really weird atmosphere with that. And this one is just a great little, I mean, it's just a great, it's actually a very simple song, but it's one of these, just, it's one of their last like purely rock songs, but it's really slow and just has a great arrangement, a really great arrangement.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really, it's also very eerie. But it is definitely like one of the biggest, like one of their last rock songs, so I mean, yeah, it's a great track.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's another one with some great lyrics in it. I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll this time. I feel my luck could change. Just these little snippets that like people say every day, and Tom somehow takes them and puts them into songs, makes them sound beautiful. And I feel like that's like a theme that begins here, is this whole idea of like taking the everyday things that people say and like finding the irony and the beauty in them at the same time. Like that, the way people settle for like just settle for less than maybe they really deserve, right? And and they're really called to. So yeah, I love the lyrics on this one. This is a really cool song. Yeah. All right, track 12,
The Tourist.
yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this one is it's probably the most stripped down song on the album. It's mostly just I feel like it's mostly just based around guitar and drums. But it's a very pretty song. I love how he talks about like, flying through life, not making and just not really caring about just kind of zooming through life, and I think that the title really fits that, like a tourist who's just running through life trying to catch everything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me that with an album that has such dark themes and seems to be so defeated on every song, that The Tourist, the last track on the album, it feels like it ends on sort of an optimistic note.
Yeah.
It's like, hey,
Yeah.
just slow down. Slow down, right?
Taking something.
Yeah. you know, and it feels like when he's singing that slowing down is actually possible, right?
Yeah.
But you think about like Airbag starts it out, right? And it's like you're gonna hit like it's like we're going so fast we're gonna hit a wall, right?
Hmm.
And maybe not even the airbag can save us, right? Um, and then it's like by the end of the record, it's like, you know, just this like technology is like this fast car that we're all riding in, and it's just gonna like when is it gonna hit a wall, right?
Yeah.
And and all these different ways. And then it's like, hey, just slow down, right?
Hey, idiot,
Just
just
kind of
slow down.
just slow it down, man. Um,
Hmm.
it's really interesting to me because obviously the Bends ended with the iconic Street Spirit, and it's so dark,
Yeah.
right? Of course, it ends with that like immerse your soul in love. So I don't know. It's really interesting to me that like, you know, for Radiohead is having this reputation as this like really like depressing band, right? They actually seem to end their albums on something of an optimistic note.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, like almost every closing track I can think of, the last line is, you know, ends on a pretty optimistic note.
Mm-hmm. I will see you in the next life.
Yeah, I'll
Right.
see you in the next life.
I,
Is it the last line of videotape where he says this will be the best day ever or whatever?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, True Love Waits. I don't know. We'll have to get to that. Well, that'd be
Yeah.
an interesting kind of thesis to explore as we go through the
Yeah.
rest of the records, right? Did they always end on a surprisingly optimistic note?
Hmm.
But yeah, like it's don't like, man, this album OK Computer is just, it's so good. Like I feel like we've been talking about it for a while now, and it's like there's just so much more that needs to be said about this
Oh
record.
yeah. Yeah.
It is just truly I mean, it's got to be one of the greatest albums ever,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Just objectively
I'd say
speaking.
it's probably the greatest album of all time,
Yeah,
and
for you it is.
maybe not for me, but I'd say it's not my favorite, but I mean
Yeah.
it's definitely up
If
there.
you were taking a step back and being a little more objective, then maybe yeah,
Hmm.
you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, you're instead of just being like, well, it's, you know, what do I really like? It's like just it's one of those records where you're like, you just got to acknowledge its greatness.
Hmm.
Like it's just so good. Um, it was really cool for me to just have it be this record that came along, you know, when I was still, you know, I've been a music fan for a few years, but it was just a record that like exploded my mental conceptions, my mental categories for what rock and roll could be, and it's never been the same since. So,
Hmm.
um, I mean, Brannick. So we talked a little bit about it already, but what's your current assessment of this album?
Well, I mean, it's one of the greatest albums of all time, and you can't argue that. And I mean, I love it dearly. I mean, it's amazing. You know, there's not a bad track on here. You can't skip a single song.
Mm-hmm.
Because it all works, even for songs like Electioneering that are not as spectacular as like other tracks. It still is important to the album.
Yeah, even Electioneering had, it just
Yeah.
sounds great. Like it
Yeah.
sounds it's not a great song, but it sounds great,
Yeah.
and fits
Hmm.
somehow with the rest of the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I think we've said it all. This is one of the greatest albums of all time. It'll be interesting when we get to the last episode of this season to, we have to rank this against some
Yeah.
of their other classic records, right?
That's gonna be very hard.
Yeah. All right. Brannick, what's your favorite song on OK Computer?
I mean, I love all these songs. I mean, like Airbag, Paranoid Android, Extra Music, and Lucky are all so amazing tracks. But I think my favorite's gonna have to be Climbing Up the Walls. I mean,
All right.
it's so claustrophobic and paranoid, and it's just so perfect.
Yeah.
I think it's the perfect Radiohead song.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah,
so
it is a doozy. I mean, it is
mhm.
it is a just a different sort of amazing song.
Mhm.
So yeah, mine, drum roll please. Airbag. I'd go with Airbag.
Airbag.
Yeah, it's just, I'm a sucker for a good opening track, and it's just, it's indelibly, I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's indelibly like just that moment in time of when I first heard OK Computer, when I first heard and then the guitar
Yeah.
and the cello bleeding back and forth, morphing into one another, and then the drums come in and just and like the effects on, and I was just like, whoa, what is like this
Yeah.
is amazing. It's just still one of the coolest things for me. So yeah, Airbag it
Yeah.
is.
All right.
All right. So hey, what is your favorite song on OK Computer? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to this channel, help us out. And we really appreciate you watching. And make sure and watch the next one and the rest of this season. The next one coming up is Kid A.
Kitty.
Yes, we'll make sure everything's in its right place.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you next time, everybody.
See ya.
Bye bye.